Hey everybody, welcome to Transformation Tuesdays, where we unpack some trauma and just try to reclaim some peace. I'm on that all day. There's been a lot of things going on. Today we're going to talk about triggers and being triggered and feelings that have been going on in the last, I would say, at least month now, at least. It's been a lot. It's been a lot going on, and I just wanted to take some time to let us get some of it out, ask some questions, see where everybody's at, create a support system for those who don't have one. So that's what this is all about. What's up, Elle? Thanks for joining. I actually have been going through a lot. When I think triggered, I think things that emotionally push buttons, things that even you can have physical triggers too. There can be all kinds of things that can trigger you. One of my biggest things is trying to figure out where those triggers come from. So I think it's super important to just own in on your feelings right now and where you're at, and making sure that you're coping correctly, so that when we are coming back out, we're coming out better, we're coming out stronger, we're coming out prepared. I think where I wanted to start with was one of my polling questions, which was, have you developed any triggers during the pandemic, during the current even month, with all of the hate that's going on, with all of the confusion of what's right and what's wrong, which some of these things I honestly feel like you should have learned growing up, as far as racism being wrong and what what you're looking towards as far as a foundation. A lot of these things are right from wrong. There is ignorance, but to what extent? I do believe that people use ignorance is bliss a little too much in today's society for the most part, and it hurts my feelings to know that people can be Christian and hate someone else, or say they follow God, but then put a ranking on who deserves what, and what things you have to accomplish in order to be at a certain stature or level, or even be okay with the fact that, oh, that person must have done something wrong, but not educate yourself on how things really are. It's sad. And it's had me, honestly, and a lot of the people who I do have as a support system, or that I do deal with, live with, family, friends, everybody that is obviously close to me is affected by it. So I feel like there's definitely some triggers that have come up. So I asked the question, what are some of the triggers that you've developed recently? I didn't get too many about the pandemic itself, which I was a little surprised, but I did get that some people already had the triggers. What's up, Q? If you already had a trigger, then I guess my question to you would be, have you noticed that this trigger has gotten worse during this time? Have any triggers not just developed, but have they become stronger? Because I've noticed with my own personal triggers that even though it's not something that's new, it can be something that is more traumatic at times, or there can be things that are happening around me or surrounding me that make that trigger even more intense to me. So I guess that would be one of my questions for everybody. Another trigger that people said was bugging them is lazy and hateful people. And I can definitely understand that. I do, when I was driving Uber a lot, I would get people who would say, well, I like being on unemployment, I don't want to go back to work. And to me, there's a difference between not having the means and becoming reliant on something that is should be very temporary. Now, am I saying that unemployment is bad or that people are just lazy. No, I'm not saying that, because there are a lot of people who do need it, but there are also a lot of people who are taking advantage of the situation. And to me, that's sad to me, because how do we get back to normal if people are pushing laziness on us in some forms of it? I think there just needs to be more accountability across the board. And as far as hateful people, like, how do we fix that? Like, how, I mean, you can educate somebody, but I think people need to be willing to educate themselves even. I mean, I can tell you till I'm blue in the face what it's like to be a black woman, but until you want to listen, until you want to hear me, it's the ball's in your court. You're going to continue to hate what you don't understand, and that whole ignorance is bliss term comes into play there, because they're like, well, how can you be mad at me for something I understand or how don't understand? But it's your responsibility to educate yourself. So if you choose to not educate yourself, you're part of the problem, big time. And if you choose as an older generation to carry on this hate, disgusting. One of the things that I don't like is that people complain about, oh, well, I didn't specifically do it, or my ancestors did it, or whatever. But it's one thing to claim to kind of know about it, and then there's another thing to turn a blind eye, I guess I would say. You're turning completely a blind eye. When I don't know something, or if something is completely triggering me, the first thing I want to do is educate myself. The first thing I'm going to do is see if there's a documentary. I'm going to go and look it up. I'm going to try to find a book that will educate me on it. I am the person who wants to be educated. I don't want anybody to be able to tell me about my heritage. I much rather would do my own research and then be able to have conversations. Like, I don't want to jump into anything not knowing what I'm talking about, or not being educated on why I'm feeling this way even. I want to know that there are legit reasons why we feel this way, why we're so angry, why people may be looting, why the fact that people are using our pain for their own purposes. There's a lot going on, a lot. Elle says, hate is in the heart. It's a heart issue. She says only God can change that. And I agree with that. And I hate that, honestly, some people are even using God to justify the hate in their heart. And that's disgusting. It's gross. Like, how can you use, well, we're all flawed. I've heard that from something I watched. It said, it was a pastor, and he was saying, we were all flawed people and this and that. Continuing to have statues that were built from hate and celebrating hate. Horrible. But there are people who are saying, well, that's just our history. But if you follow God, you know that once you change a history and you decide to do better, you do away with old deeds. So that's one thing that is very important for people to know. Elle says, and for unemployment, they probably say that because they are receiving more money than what they receive while working a job, not justifying, but that extra $600 per week on top of the state's weekly. And honestly, Elle, that's what I'm talking about them making us a lazy society as well. You're making us lazy as well by overcompensating for something, and then people feeling like, well, what is the incentive for working now? What is the incentive if you're going to pay me this for sitting at home? And letting you feed into my insecurities, letting you feed into my anger, letting you feed into my hate. What is the point of me doing anything in life if I don't have to? That is where I feel like the laziness comes from. Benefit got some people feeling like they're balling. And I agree with that. But I guess to me, I've always been a hard worker. I've always had to work really hard, and I feel like America has always been somewhere, even for people who are foreigners, that they come here and they work even harder. They do work hard. They're hardworking people. There's people who live here who, not to be mean, but you are kind of privileged, and then you complain about a Mexican citizen or even an immigrant working harder than you and still in all your jobs, but you're not willing to work as hard as them. To me, that's a disadvantage to yourself. That's a disadvantage to you. Like, you cannot complain about something that you yourself aren't willing to change. What's up, Melanin Joy? So to me, that's where I stand on those issues. One thing that for me during this pandemic and during this whole time frame is the will we have made, or the will we have been at to go backwards. It frustrates me so much. It is so much of a trigger to see people being hung again. And for it to be not foul play. Since when are we hanging each other or hanging ourselves? Like, that's not a thing at all. So you mean to tell me I'm gonna leave my home to lynch myself? Is that what we're saying? And it's usually younger or adolescent kids. That makes me sick. Like, that's definitely, if that doesn't trigger you, if that doesn't hurt your heart, if you are willing to just listen to that and just stand by and not want a change, I worry. Like, I've heard people say, well, that's just how it is. They don't care about us. Right? But we have an opportunity now to do something about it. What are you going to do? Are you just going to sit there? Oh, I'll give it a couple of weeks and it'll go back to normal. What is your normal? Why are you okay with that being your normal? I personally have a black child and a black husband. To know that they could leave the house and be hung, you're okay with that? To know that they're getting pulled out of cars for no reason and beaten and shot and murdered, that affects me. How does that not affect you? It makes my heart cry. It's more than a trigger to me. Elle says, I've been on unemployment before and the state amount was nowhere close to what I was making. And I agree. Again, the amount is ridiculous. How do you... And I think one of the problems we also have is greed. We have a huge issue with greed in America, to where you sometimes sell out your own people. You sell out, whatever, to be at a level that is a level that you feel comfortable. Comfortability has become agreed in a way, but there are ways we can work towards comfortability and helping each other build, where we don't have to depend on some of these assistants, where we don't have to be thriving on laziness or waiting for somebody to tell us what our next move is. We have the capability to sit in our homes and build foundations. We have the ability to do that, but no one's speaking that up. Nobody's speaking that up. Melanin Joy says, no way in the world that was a suicide. And there's several, Melanin Joy. There hasn't been just one. And it's awakening, I'm hoping to most people. There's the NASCAR incident. This is something that was guarded, that happened within their own community of drivers or whoever helps with assisting. If we're having an issue within, like, NASCAR, which they have made it clear, some of them, or at least one person, that they would quit because of the Confederate flag. And what it stands for is disgusting. But it was a beginning to someone else, or maybe even the same person, feeling comfortable enough to put a noose on the only black man NASCAR driver in plain sight, in front of all the people who are supposed to be your companions, the people that are supposed to be your coworkers and your friends and whatever. Nobody saw nothing. Nobody knows nothing. It's sad. It's sickening. And the fact that you're saying these are accidents, but then the noose is becoming a threatening thing all over the world again, I'm confused. I don't see how people are not triggered. So, I mean, if you guys can, just give me a couple things that, just from what we've been talking about, what is triggering you? Are these things part of your triggers? Are these triggers bringing up other traumas or other triggers for you? Is that happening? Definitely for me, it's making me feel like I wish my dad was around, because I feel like he was he was a protective individual. So it gave me a little fight. It has made me, that trigger has caused me to want to get a firearm. I want to protect myself. I want to protect my children. I want to teach them how to protect themselves. It's definitely built up some triggers. Can be fears. They can be anxieties. They can be physical hurt. I've had days where I don't even want to deal with nothing. I don't want to watch anything. I'm just exhausted. That is something that is triggering me. And when I have these moments, I do have to sit with myself and say, oh my gosh, how am I allowing this to get to me, and what can I do? Melanin Joy says, none of them have. I refuse to believe it. It boils down to systemic racism. It's comfortable for most to either ignore it or to enjoy its privilege. I agree. Another thing that I've noticed, and I don't know, I'm honestly really curious to know if anyone else has dealt with this either before, during, or at all. But one of the triggers that I have that has been bugging me for a while is with sometimes our own color. With me being a Black woman, I am mixed with Spanish, but I don't see I'm Spanish and Black. I don't go around saying when you see me, you see that I'm Black. Regardless, if cop sees me, if whoever sees me, I don't separate myself. I am who I am. I love Black people because that is a part of me. I love Spanish people. That is a part of me. However, from Black women, more than one occasion, actually family, I have gotten, you're not Black enough. You're not Black. And let me just pause there, because you as a Black woman, one, and usually, honestly, is a Black woman who says this. Why? Why are you saying that to another Black woman who I do have this very same struggles, if not more. My name is Spanish, it's Yolanda. So when I go to a job interview, they think that they're hiring a Hispanic woman, and I show up and they're like, oh, you're Black. I deal with it all the time, but to me, I know who I am, so it doesn't bother me. But to have someone who is the same as me tell me you're not Black enough, or you're not dark enough, or you don't understand, and I understand that you have hurts, obviously, to make you feel like you have to downplay my Blackness to make your Blackness stand up. I don't understand that. There should not be a separation, and that's colorism. It really is. It's a colorism thing. But it's sad. I really do wish there was a way we could fix that. Also, not uplifting each other, feeling like we're all greedy, or that only one of us can make it, or only a few of us can make it. That's a mentality that has been promoted around people who don't care about us, trying to make us think that way, trying to keep us against each other, very much so. But why is it? Why would another Black woman tell you I'm Blacker than you? One, in most cases, it was when I was making an educated statement and they had no defense, so that was their defense. Because it does hurt. It hurts my feelings when someone is cutting me down for no reason. What is the point of that? Do you not think that I get pulled over and my kids don't get threatened, and my kids don't get told that they're too dark to play with the white? Like, where does that come from? And I have asked that, and it's just like, well, my skin is darker than yours. Are we still there? That's sad. It's sad. What are you guys' thoughts on that? Hey, Megs. I'm sorry, Morgan. What's up, Morg? Leaving that there, I'm gonna let you guys answer on that. What do you think is causing that? How do we get away from that thinking? Like that, for me, if someone is mixed, someone has a white husband, someone has an interracial marriage, or is dealing with certain things, please, don't do that. Don't poke at them. Don't tell them they're less than you. Don't feel like your Blackness is more than their Black. There's no such thing. There is not a such thing. I understand that is what, honestly, white people for a long time have done to us. But can we stop doing it to each other? Please. Can we take a break from that? Can we get away from that altogether? Because to me, that's a whole nother hate too. So not only do we have other people hating us, but we're going to hate each other? Because that makes sense? I don't know. But these are my thoughts. So, if you have anything to suggest, anything that has anyone else had that issue? I know my skin color doesn't bug me, but it bugs other people for whatever reason. And I have to live with that. Racist slanders and stuff, I deal with it. I've also been told, well, you don't have the same issues as me because you're thinner than me or because you're prettier than me. Can we stop it? Can we get away from that? Can we focus on the bigger issues that are going on right now? Can we talk about how we're going to rebuild our government? Can we talk about stuff that is educated and means something and stop belittling each other to the point where we don't even want to fight against anything bigger than that? I mean, come on, we all have triggers. And to say that someone may be prettier than you, I mean, it can be a compliment, but it depends on how it is stated to that person. Well, you don't have the same issues as me, but how do you know? Have you asked me? I guess my point in saying that is don't assume. Don't assume you know what people's traumas are, what their triggers are, because to me, that was a trigger for me. Even for some people to tell me, oh, you're just too this and you're too that. I didn't feel very beautiful for a long time when I was, being touched or had other triggers. I didn't feel like that. I felt like, why can't I just not be so pretty? Or I would downgrade my pretty, or I would get super lazy so no one would want me. There's things that happen to people, and so can we stop judging and start building? I think Elle has talked about it a lot in her Wind Down Wednesdays. She talked about rebuilding family, and I think it starts there with being comfortable with the family too. You need to be comfortable with who you are yourself. We kind of talked about that. Being content and being able to work on yourself. I think we all need to focus on setting goals, setting boundaries. If someone's saying these hurtful things to you, take space. It's okay to do that. Because these are triggers. They're for real triggers. It's real. Let me get through some of these comments. Elle says colorism is going to be around as long as racism is around. Darker skinned people have generally received more racism inside and outside of Black community. I know darker skinned individuals who have issues with lighter skin issues. I mean, I get it. I just feel like we have so many more issues. Team light skin versus team dark skin. People think it's funny and it's not. Light skin not black enough, or dark skin not seen as beautiful. All are lies. All shades are beautiful. Elle says people say things sometimes out of their insecurities without intention of offending, yet they do offend. And I think to team light skin, team dark skin, I want to say, because like I said, I am mixed. So for my Spanish side, it's so funny because I'm Panamanian and Puerto Rican. That's what my mom's actual race. That's what she is. That is what she's made up of. But from that side of it, when you're Panamanian, you tend to be darker. When you're Puerto Rican, they want you to be lighter. So if you come into like my family dynamics, you will see that we are all shades of brown. And it hurts my feelings because even on that side, I've had people tell me, well, you're too dark to be Spanish, or why are you so dark? And there's colorism on the Spanish side as well. It's not just with Black people. It's not. But it hurts either way is the point I'm making. The point is that colorism is a trigger, that colorism still exists, that it shouldn't exist, that we have work to do, basically. With building a family, as Elle says, we also need to build our insecurities back up. We need to find a way to start rebuilding each other within a community instead of fighting each other, because guess what? All of the fighting is what I think our government might want. They're getting exactly what they want. They're creating separation. They're creating toxicity. And I think instead of focusing on a way to fix it, we're focusing on our hurt. We're sitting in rooms and not having conversations about how to fix it, but we are still tearing each other down, and we are still separating from each other. And it's sad. Oh, hey, Morg says, Latins are the same way, sadly. I am too mixed, or I too am mixed, Puerto Rican, Mexican, and Black. See, you understand me. So, I mean, it happens. But my point in all of that was that words hurt. Be careful when you are trying to separate what one kind of hate from the other, because sometimes hate is hate regardless. So be careful. Use your words carefully. Don't assume you know a person's position. Don't assume because you see a pretty lady that, oh, she has everything, she can get everything, because maybe her mental ain't where it's supposed to be. Maybe her heart is broken and she's not able to, accept things that come into her life, or maybe she doesn't feel that way about herself. Don't assume during this time. Be cautious. Proceed with caution. So that was my point of that. Elle says that begins with parenting, though. It's on parents to instill pride and beauty of their children in themselves. And I agree with that to an extent, because I think some people, even outside of the home, you can develop triggers. You can develop triggers that come from some of these things that maybe your parent did instill that in you, but you develop an insecurity, and then when people know that it's an insecurity, or maybe even don't know and they have their own, then they attack you. And that, I don't think, has anything to do with the kids. But especially though, for people who have racism, for people who allow it to be like within your home, where family members and different people are allowed to treat your kids differently depending on their skin color. I've seen that before. Definitely on the parents. It's definitely up to generations too, because I've seen several white people saying all white people are racist and this is just who we are. And can I tell you that's a trigger as well? Stop saying that's who you are, because honestly, you make a decision of who you want to be. And if you decide to be this hateful person, don't push that on everybody else. Everybody has an ability to grow, and stop being so ignorant. If you choose not to, don't just, that's just the way I am, and play victim of the situation and pretend like it's all good and that's just the way it is. It's not okay. Going on to the next topic, how do you control emotions when you're feeling triggered? One person responded and said, go silent, write. They talk to their confidants, and then they also listen to music. It just kind of helps them to depress. I do a lot of those things as well. Another person says conversations, understanding others' perspective. So I understand that too, because sometimes when someone, it helps to have a conversation, because if someone is so set in their ways, sometimes they have a perspective because of something they've experienced. Not all the time, but it helps to have a conversation to understand where a person is coming from. I do think that you have to be in a calm space to have those conversations. I think it is important to make sure, I think we talked about this on Wind Down Wednesday, but it's important to make sure that you're ready to receive the information, because if it's going to be a conflict, there's no point of having the conversation if neither one of you are at a point to listen or hear, because you're not going to hear it. You're not. And then also, the last person said, think about it, talk about it, discuss it once emotions are in check, and timing is everything. All of the things that we just said basically are there. I think for me, I like to educate myself. When something's bugging me, I like to think about it. Like the last person said, I do like to think about it because I want to understand where this trigger is coming from. Why am I all of a sudden feeling this burden of heaviness on me? Is it being played over and over again? Am I looking at too much of this stuff? As far as like media, I honestly don't even like to watch the news, but honestly, I feel like social media has become the new news, so it doesn't really matter if I watch that if I'm on social media. But one of the things that I kind of do is I step away from social media and maybe go to a documentary, or I'll take a break and read a book or something different, because being constantly fed something will trigger you as well. So I tend to sometimes just step away. That's a good way to cope with your emotions, to have a break, to be able to break down those emotions. Another thing that helps me is I do have a group that I meet with on Fridays of ladies that are mothers who are Black, who are understanding of my issues, who we do bounce stuff off of each other, but we also call each other on our crap. We also can be very honest and vulnerable with each other. And I think having a safe space is very important. Even if you don't always want to hear it, it's important to know that these people, or even if it's just one person, that this person can hear you out. This person is listening to you, that you get to at least bounce stuff off of, that you don't feel like you're going to be attacked, but that there will be someone on the other end that can tell you, okay, we're going to get through this together. I think that's important to build another. If you don't have a foundation, it's time to start, I think, building one. I think that's super important. Is there anything else you guys feel like I missed as far as when your emotions are caught up? What do you do out there in live land? What do you do? Like, how do you calm down? I also listen to music. I also write. I do get into my Bible, or I'll do a devotional just to kind of balance what's going on. I think those check-ins are important. Sometimes it helps me to just check in on other people, even to unfocus on my hurt and my pain, and just kind of checking on somebody else. Maybe I'm just too much into how I'm feeling. Let me check on somebody else, because then it takes it a little bit off of me. Elsa, sex definitely helps, especially good sex. And I think romance as well. I think if you have a significant other right now and you're dealing with, especially a Black husband or a Black boyfriend, spouse, whatever, right now we're going through a lot. So I think you need to love on each other as much as you can. I work out. Morg says, I work out and take a break to remove myself, to gain perspective, and not about to play with you. L. And then L says, I do whatever makes me feel good. Shop. I'm trying not to shop as much right now, actually, because I honestly want to get I want to come out of this with more money, because I have a feeling with how lazy everybody's being, we gonna dig ourselves in a bigger hole, and I don't want to be trying to dig myself out of it. So I'm trying to do the most I can to be productive and not spend as much. But I am, one of the things that I've also done that helps with some of my triggers with the hate is supporting Black businesses. I've been doing a lot of buying, Black owned food, Black owned beauty products, Black owned skincare, and what else have I been buying? Oh, and hair products. Like, I've been doing a lot of that, and actually it's liberating for me. I would much rather spend my money knowing that it's building my community up. I'm way more than fine with that, because honestly, I just had a really bad experience at it was actually, I'm not going to say the actual place, but it was a seafood place, because I don't eat meat. And I went there, and there was me and my husband and my daughter, and we were trying to order our food, and we got up and we washed our hands, because we wash our hands a lot right now. So we came back to the table, and the lady had already taken the people across from me. Mind you, the people across from me are white. Didn't think anything of it at the time. Didn't feel any disconnect between me and the white people, right? It's perfect. Don't know their names. That's why I'm calling them white people, not because of anything else. But anyways, we were sitting at the same table with a couple who was white. And again, on my side was me, my husband, and my daughter. And we attempted to order our food. The first thing that an Asian waitress came around, and she's like, what did you want to get? And I'm looking at the dinner menu, because I don't know if it's dinner or lunch, whatever. I came there to eat. I want to eat. She proceeds to tell me, go to the lunch menu. You need to go. And she flips my page to the lunch menu. Okay. Didn't think anything of it. Great. After this, however, she proceeds to, I'm ordering my food. I have to eat fish or seafood because, yes, it's more expensive, but that's what I eat. So I order shrimp. And she's like, well, she starts running off prices to me. That's going to be, I think it was like $15. Is that okay? And I'm like, that's what I'm ordering. Yes, that's okay. So we get to, and then I tell her, well, I want a lobster. Oh, do you know that the lobster is going to be $21? Is that okay? Is that okay with you? $21? Like super loud in the restaurant. Wait, if I'm ordering it and I can see the price in front of me, yes, I want a lobster. Mind you, she has already taken the white couple's order. I didn't know at the time that they had ordered from the dinner menu. No issues, no questions, no nothing. She even bowed to them as she took their order. So I go and I'm like, okay, whatever. So I order my husband's food. I'm like, maybe she's just tricky about mine. Repeats his order. Are you sure that's what you want? It costs this. My daughter's order, same thing. Are you sure you want this? It costs this amount. Can I tell you, by the end of that order, I was so disgusted I didn't want to eat. But because I went there for my husband to enjoy the meal, I wasn't going to ruin his meal. I was going to, go through with it. And it was an experiment for me because I want to know how this is going to play out. Because I honestly feel like even the white people were looking at her like, what's the issue? Like, why are you screaming out her prices? But my husband saw I was irritated and he's like, are you okay? And I'm like, I'm good. I'm going to get through it. Moving forward, we get to the end of the meal. Everything's great with the guy who's cooking the food. And she comes back and she takes our check. And she gives it to us and she, she's like, do you need anything? No. She goes to the white people. She bows to them. She says, thank you so much for visiting us. Would you like ice cream? Offers them dessert and all this stuff. It was such a great thing to please you. Mind you, we are at the same table. There is nothing different but our skin color. That's it. So when the check comes, he pulls out his coupon and says, oh, I have 30% off. If she had shit on her face, I promise you I would have handed her a whole roll because she was just, oh, well, you had to give me that in the beginning, but because, I'll take care of you. Okay. Mind you, me and my husband paid cash money, no tip needed. Whatever the hell the tip was whatever was extra, and we got up and we walked out. Of course she assumed, oh, did you pay? Can I have your check? Oh, we paid and we're done. But that confirmed to me there will be no more other restaurants other than black owned for me because I don't like going somewhere and feeling like I'm out of place. I don't like you feeling like I don't have enough to pay for something that you're just serving me. You don't own the restaurant. It's disgusting. It's sad. It is a trigger for me that you have to go out of your way to try to embarrass me and make me feel like I'm less than at a table with a person who actually looked like he was trying to save more than I was. But it was a point of you went out of your way to do harm to my character, to do harm to me as a person. That's just sad. It's just sad. And the other couple, they didn't say anything. They were there a lot longer than us because they had to figure out their coupon situation or whatever. But the problem that I saw was you're judging me. And this is the point where everyone's saying, well, I don't see it. It never happens to me. This. There's no difference. There's definitely a difference. And this was a teaching experience for my kid because when everyone's seeing it, she can see that climate and she can make a decision that, oh, no, this has happened to me. So when I'm having these conversations, and that's another reason why I sat through it, because I wanted to see where it went. I wanted my daughter to see the experience so that it would be easier for me to explain to her, this is an educating moment. This is what happens sometimes just because I never said anything to this lady. It would be one thing if I asked her for my prices, like, oh, okay, how much is this? But I can read, I can write. Did you assume I couldn't? Just things that I'm thinking. So going through the comments, Elle says, I would have asked her, why are you quoting prices to me? Then would have asked the couple, did she quote prices to them? I couldn't sit through that, especially during this societal climate. Remember overseas in Asia, they were banning blacks from places at the start of Rona coming worldwide. I can't read all this, sorry, it's not coming all up. They had signs on windows. Wow, I didn't actually, you just educated me on something. Oh, I didn't know that. She would have had to lose her job that day. Now, fast forward, I did write a review. This happened yesterday. I wrote a review today. I did send it to corporate. So I didn't not address the issue, but I took it as a teaching moment instead, and I'll never go back. For me, it was better for me to be calm in that situation, to teach my daughter something, I really just, right now, sometimes I feel like I get numb. So for me, sometimes it's like, I'm not going to let you get me to a point of me losing my character, because I feel like if I would have said something and then she lashed out at me, it would have been a different situation. So I did ask her a couple of times, like, I did ask her at least once, like, I felt like by telling her this is okay, she didn't have to continue to do it. So I felt like she already knew what she was doing. So there was no point of asking her why. Moore says, agreed, and I'm sorry that you guys had to go through that, especially if that's a trigger, because that could have messed up your whole day. But you did handle it very well and compassionate, and in comparison to how I would have. And in another time, before my healing, it probably would have been another situation. Elle says, how did you teach your daughter she should deal with... No. It wasn't teaching her she should deal with it. It was teaching her that it's a real thing. Because right now in social media, in the news, in different outlets, she's watching people say, it's not real. That's not a thing. This doesn't happen. So I wanted her to be aware and see that, no, this does happen. This is one of the many ways that there is a difference in how people treat you. That's what I was teaching her. It wasn't that she should deal with the situation at all. And it was the fact that this is something that is real and this is something that is happening. And if you're treated this way, you need to know that this is not okay. That's what I mean by a teachable moment. Hope that clears it up for you. As far as triggers, the next part I want to go into is, do you feel that there are levels to trigger reactions? Why or why not? I had someone said, yes, small issues may not have the same effects as a big issue. And absolutely, especially if someone is triggering you on purpose. For me, I say definitely yes. I think there's levels, because at one point in my life, maybe when I was younger, racism didn't seem like as big of an issue as when I got older. And I think it is enhanced more. I feel like I'm even more emotional with the hateful side of it. I think for other triggers, as far as like if you've ever had any form of abuse or neglect or anything like that, I deal with the trigger a lot differently. I might have just like kind of brushed it off or tried to ignore it before, but after I healed, I handle that trigger differently. I'll separate myself from whatever is happening with that. I'll take action on it. I'll definitely speak up. I speak up a lot more. I'm actually almost to a fault gonna tell you what I think about an issue, versus when I was at a younger age, or when I wasn't healed from it, there would be less of that backlash. So I think that I think there's levels to it. I think there's levels of healing, there's levels of how a trigger affects you. I think it also depends on when you're dealing with a trigger. If you're under a whole lot of emotional stress already and you get a trigger, I feel like you are more likely to lash out than if you're able to realize something is a trigger and calm yourself down in a different way, or think through it, or talk to someone about it. I feel like if you let a trigger fester, it turns into an explosion. So I think there's definitely levels. You can be very calm with a trigger and be like, okay, I know this is a trigger for me. I need to step away and be very aware of it. Or you can get a trigger, not realize it's a trigger, lose your character, go off, completely lose it over a trigger because you haven't dealt with it, because maybe you were already under a lot of pressure and then this trigger happened. So I think it happens. Elle says, yeah, sorry you experienced that, but that lady needed a teachable moment. Not saying cuss her out. She should have easily gotten away with that without getting out of character like the lady in. I mean, I guess, yes, but sometimes if I'm being honest about who I am, it's not that simple for me to, because I would have cussed her out. If I would have reacted, it wouldn't have been a small reaction. So I have to also know who I am and know where I was in how I feel about hate right now. And I feel like if I would have said something to her and then she said something even more disrespectful to me, it would have been a problem. And I made a decision, honestly. So, I mean, I'm comfortable with that, but I understand where you're coming from. And I think it is my hope that that restaurant handles it appropriately by me giving a review, because there's different ways you can deal with different issues. And I felt like I dealt with it in a different way. I chose to write the corporate. I chose for them to handle it on their level so that my character wasn't interrupted by going after her at the time. Elle says, my trigger right now has been person-based, working hard to overcome. That was the purpose of the lady in Baltimore. Yeah, so anyone else, how do you guys feel? Do you feel like there's layers to triggered reactions? Like, do you feel like there's levels? There's, an intense level. I do agree with it being a small trigger and it being a big trigger based off of, what your reaction is going to be. I do feel like when someone knows your triggers and they are triggering you, like the person said, absolutely, especially if the person knows it's a trigger and they're doing it on purpose, I feel like that can cause hurt. That can cause you to separate from people. That can cause you to break down. But I think only if you're willing to do something about it. If you know someone is specifically triggering you, then I would say you probably need to create some space between you and that person. And if you are being triggered, or like in my case, I had a couple people where I did lose a couple friends during this because their morals and what they stand for, and I would have never known this until this came up, but they may have a problem with my skin color but felt like I was their black friend, or may feel like I'll love you as long as I can feel like I'm above you, but other than that, it doesn't work. That doesn't work for anybody. The last question I think that we were going to talk about, or that I tried to poll, but we didn't have enough people. I think 2 people said no, but the question is, once there's a trigger, is there always a trigger? I personally think that it depends on what the trigger is. Because I think when you experience something, your perspective on the issue may be changed. I also feel like sometimes a trigger can be a mindset issue. A trigger can be a heart issue. A trigger can be, it can go away. I think a trigger can go away if you work on it, if you receive counseling for it, and it is not something that is debilitating anymore, then you can slowly get rid of that trigger. I know triggers of like death, when you lose a family member, or a friend that, you know, has hurt you really bad or something like that. That can be a trigger to hurt trust. That can be a trigger to feel like you'll never get that person back. That is a harder trigger to get rid of, definitely. So I would say, I'm not really sure. I'm still, for me, myself, I think you can work towards it being less of a trigger, but I think a trigger kind of lingers in my personal experience, just because, like, for years I've been trying to feel better about being a fatherless daughter, but it doesn't. Some years it feels less, but it doesn't go away. I still miss my dad. Like, I don't think those triggers completely go away. It makes you aware of your feelings, but I don't know if they're supposed to. I think that's the tricky part about, like, that scenario. When you're dealing with emotions from people treating you bad, I think when you get someone who treats you better, as far as like relationships go, then you get to rebuild. I think what also helps with not keeping that trigger is realizing the trigger, working towards a solution for the trigger, but also for working towards the trigger being fixed is, if you are able to be accountable for it, then you are on your way to fixing that trigger. Because when you can be accountable for it, that means that you should be able to create a boundary. And when you create a boundary, that's gold. Because once you create the boundary, if that boundary is not able to be broken, then you are in a safer place to not be triggered by those same behaviors anymore, because you're keeping yourself away from them. And I think I know I talked about making a boundary list on Elle's show last Wednesday. And I think that's important. I think it's important for us to create boundaries, even especially right now with so much going on. Create boundaries, educate ourselves, because we're in a time where we're going to need to protect our mental health. We're going to need to protect our hearts. We're going to need to be of a sound mind and reclaim our peace. Transformation Tuesdays are so powerful to me because I get to release, but I also get to talk to people. I get to hear from people. I get to hopefully share some love and open some eyes during Transformation Tuesdays. And I love that. I love being able to just hang on to the fact that I can get on here and I can share and I can hopefully rebuild people that are feeling like they're in a broken spot. Don't feel discouraged if you feel lost right now. If you feel like it can be overwhelming, surround yourself though. If you don't want to surround yourself, or you don't feel like you have people close enough to you, find some lives, find some platforms that'll give you some positivity, that will uplift you, that will at least let you know that you're not alone, that you're not going through this alone. And be better, want better. Don't let what's going on in society weaken you to make you feel like you can't do more than where you are, because you've come from somewhere. So don't let this cripple you. You need to make sure you're getting up, making sure you're getting out of bed. Do not let depression overcome you. There's so many things that you can do to fix triggers, to become stronger when dealing with triggers, to surround yourselves. Look for, even if it's like a group on, I don't know, Facebook or whatever, find something that makes you want motivate to be a better person, or motivate to be less triggered, motivate to stay undepressed, motivate to be at peace. Find something, because right now I think it's an awesome time to reclaim me. I know I'm doing it. I'm doing the work. The hardest part is doing the work. It's not easy. I'm not telling you, you're going to wake up tomorrow and everything's going to be perfect, but it's definitely time. And we need to uplift each other. Stop pushing each other down. I know we're all hurting. Don't think that your hurt is bigger than someone else's hurt. Instead, encourage each other to get up, because we have been through so much. If you guys have watched any of the documentaries on slavery or anything else, or even watched or listened to your textbook, you know that now's is a time that we're trying to rise back up. There are several ways to do that. One of the things that I'm encouraging for all of my family, friends, and even randoms, vote. You have a voice. Don't let nobody tell you. And there was something, I'm not sure what state this was. I was looking at it earlier, but I did post it. There was only one place for people to vote. So now you're taking away our means to vote because they know how powerful we are. Do you think they would do that if they felt like it was the other way around, that we weren't as powerful with our vote? There are certain powers we have. We have the power to read. Kentucky, thank you, Elle. We have the power to read, but yet less of us read. I'm not going to say none of us read because a lot of us do, but less of us read. And if we are reading, are we reading educational things to uplift ourselves, to be knowledgeable about politics and different things that we hate to talk about because maybe it just makes us uncomfortable? We need to educate ourselves then. If something makes me uncomfortable, me personally, I want to be educated on it because I don't want to be uncomfortable in you're not going to tell me I'm weak at anything. And I think with our ancestors being slaves, with them going through and marching and doing all the things that we're trying to reinvent, when they lynch us, we get up and we fight. We have to rise up, but it takes us being together. If we're apart, divided, we fall. Can we stop being divided? Like, I encourage more people to surround me that have positive influence, that will help me be educated. I want that. I'm not running from nobody who's going to keep me and keep knowledge in me. I'm just not going to do that. To me, if I do that, I'm doing a disservice to myself. So I will not do that. I think once we get there, sky's the limit. I think we can build up our own Black community. I think there could be, and not for segregation, but to have equal and to feel wanted by even our own people. There's nothing wrong with that, but then we also have to stop with the colorism and the separation. If you're doing that, you're doing the same thing government does. They create brackets for us. Why would we do that to ourselves? We need to stop. Elle says we need to be careful as to not take in too much negativity in order to protect our mental health. Agreed. So again, like I caveat every time I have a show, if you guys or anyone who is going through trauma, who needs uplifting, who just needs an ear, I'm around. DM me. My page is not private. Tune in. Come hang out with me on Tuesdays. I'm here. I'm around. I do always tune into Wind Down Wednesdays. If you guys are available on Wednesdays, also tune into Elle's show, Wind Down Wednesday on IMLJ. And stay prayed up, stay uplifted. This is Yolanda with Reclaiming Me, where we launch a war on trauma. You guys have an amazing, amazing day. Please unpack some of your trauma and reclaim some of your peace this week. I love you guys. Thank you so, so much for tuning in, and have a blessed week. Bye.